it's Jo here with another Time for Tea Designs video, and in tonight's video I'm going to be batch making some Christmas cards. So this was an idea of how to make some quick, clean and simple Christmas cards using some of the new release, and I decided in the end to use the Catmas Crackers, the Skating by Penguins and the Caroling Critters, and I'm going to make 3 cards using the top folding A6 card blanks, and I'm also going to use the A6 layering dies. So I'm just looking through my dies here to see what size panels I want to create, and I'm going to layer those up onto some of our patterned our patterned paper from the new Winter Wonderland paper pad. So I'm just seeing which sizes will look nice and what size border I want of that patterned paper around our focal panel. In the end, I decided to use this size in one panel and then 2 slightly smaller panels because I wanted quite a nice deep border around those focal panels. I'm cutting 3 pieces of my patterned cardstock with the second to largest of those layering dies. So you can see here I've got 3 pieces of my patterned paper and then 3 panels. I'm going to stamp my images onto these panels now. So the first image that I'm going to stamp is the little mouse from the Caroling Critters. And I'm going to team that up with the sentiment, "We wish you a Merry Christmas." So the idea is that we're going to keep this very simple, one layer in terms of our stamping and colouring. So there'll be no die cutting of our images. We are just going to stamp these straight onto our focal panel. So I've stamped my little mouse image using some of my Memento Tuxedo Black ink, and then for contrast I'm going to stamp out my sentiment in coloured ink. I wanted to check which colour did match with my background and was a nice contrast, so I'm just checking through some of my distress inks, and in the end this I think it was Faded Jeans that we went for in the end, was a really nice contrast, and it brought out the blue that's in the notes in the background paper. So I tested it out there first of all on a scrap piece of cardstock before I committed to it on my final panel here, and I think that works really well. My next image is going to be one of our little penguins, and I'm going to use the sentiment, "You make me snow happy," which I think is a really fun sentiment. If you were going to be doing these as genuine batch making of cards, what I would probably do is not mix up my images, but just pick one image that I really liked and sentiment that I really enjoyed, and then you can leave that on your stamping platform as I've done here, and just keep swapping out your die cut focal panels and stamp out a series of them which you can then colour all at once. But I wanted to show how you can use the different stamp sets to make this and how they can look a little bit different although you're using the same essential layout. For our third image, I'm going to use the Catmas Crackers cat. I'm going to use the little Santa hat that comes in the set, and then the sentiment is from the Skating by Penguins. Because this is going to be one layer and we're not going to be doing any die cutting, I needed to do a little bit of masking. So because our hat is going to be in the forefront, I've stamped that hat first, and I'd already fussy cut a little mask out of some, just out of a post-it note that I've popped over the top of my stamped hat. And now I'm going to stamp our little cat, and I'm stamping all of my black sentiments in VersaFine Onyx Black ink because I feel that that gives a really bright, crisp sentiment. So there are our 3 panels complete. They look really very simple and quite plain at the moment, but you'll see at the end just how these do come to life once you add a few little extra embellishments and some colour. So I'm colouring up my images with my Copic markers here, and I'm using slightly different shades for my penguin because my cool grey markers that I usually use had all run out, unfortunately. So I'm actually using BV23 and BV25, I believe, along with my cool grey 1 and 7, just to darken those shadows up. And I think those colours work really nicely because they add a little bit of a bluish tinge to the coat of our penguin. The hats I'm doing in traditional red, so I'm doing both of those at the same time. And you can see here that if you had a series of images that were all going to be coloured the same, that you could really make quick work of this, because they're quite small images, they're quite simple. I think the penguin in particular is great for your batch card making, because you only need a few colours, and then you've already decided what you're going to be doing, how you're going to be colouring them, and you can just work through them really methodically. So moving on to our little mouse, and I'm doing him in a series of E-colours. So I'm using E30, E31 and E33 just to give him a little field mouse look. And I'm just using the lightest shade first, as you've seen me do before, and then blending that out using the mid-tone and the darker shades. For our little cat, I'm going to colour my cat like our cat Rosie. So what I wanted to show here was that you don't have to just use the markings that are already on the cat that we've stamped out. So I've done just a layer all the way around the outside in my warm grey 3 first of all. Then I've added a little bit more depth with the warm grey 5, and then the warm grey 7 will add those little stripes just to make it look like the tiger stripes that Rosie's got. And I've left the middle white, as she's got a white chest and a white belly, and then I'm just adding some pink to the ears and to the cheeks. For the mouse's outfit, so the mouse is probably the one that requires the most colouring because he's wearing clothes. So I'm using colours that will coordinate with the background paper that we're going to be using, which is the fa la 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 scripty background. So I've picked some BG shades, and then that same sort of blue that we used for the sentiment. So this is B93 and B95, and I'm using that for the shoes and for the mittens. And then for a little bit of a pop of colour that will just make it stand out a little bit, I felt that the pink would be a really nice addition to that. So these are RV shades, I think, of 52 and 32, I believe. And then just added a bit of cool grey 1 to the song sheet. So that they didn't all look like they were floating in mid-air, I decided that I would add a little bit of ground, so a little bit of snow beneath each of our characters. So I'm using the B000 for the penguin and for our cat. And then for the mouse, because he's going to be in a more of a minty background, I'm using the BG000 instead. And then I think I used the BG 00 just to add a little bit of extra colour. Sorry, no, it was the BG 10. I do apologise. To make them stand out a little bit more, because they're not, obviously it is a 1-layer card, so they're not die cut, I've added a little bit of shadow around each of the images with the cool grey 1. And all this does is just add a little bit of depth. It's almost like a drop shadow effect to make them look like they're not just one-dimensional, and that just really helps add a little bit of depth to each of the characters. So now each of those panels are complete, I can add them to my backgrounds and see whether they do work in the placements that we'd decided on. So I decided on the stripy background for the penguin and then the star background for our cat, and I think they all look really, really cute the way they are. But I felt that maybe there was a little bit too much white space under each of those sentiments. So I've decided that I would just snip those down a little bit and make them a little bit shorter and probably a bit squarer in shape. And then that will create an even bigger background of our pattern paper, which I think looks really nice, that bigger border. So snipping each of those down, just using my trimmer. I've not done any measuring, I've just done that by eye. And then because the backgrounds did still feel quite plain, I thought the addition of some of these smaller stamps would just add a nice touch to the background and make them a little bit more interesting. So I'm using the notes that are in the Caroline Critters set in that same shade of faded jeans that we used for the sentiment, and that just really brings that all together. And I had to stop myself from going too mad because, again, we're keeping it clean and simple. We're not going to over fussy the panels here. And for our other characters, I decided that because we were going with a snowy theme, that some snow in the background would look really nice. And I'm second generation stamping to keep that muted so it doesn't take away from our characters. So I'm doing that in tumbled glass for the cat, and it was difficult to see on screen there, but you will see in the pictures at the end that that just really does bring that together. And then I'm using some hickory smoke, again second generation stamping, so stamping that off onto a scrap piece of cardstock to one side and then stamping it actually onto my focal panel, so it just looks that little bit more muted in the background. Once I'd done that to the other two cards, I felt that I really wanted to do that for our little mouse. So I decided again that little pop of pink would just really liven this background up. So again, some second generation stamping of my little snowflake and just randomly stamping this in the background. And again, that just brings the whole colour scheme together. And just trying to decide where I have my last snowflake there without overdoing it. Now that's those focal panels are complete, we can start assembling. So I'm using some liquid glue on the patterned paper, but then because we don't have any other dimension, I felt that some foam tape on the back of the focal panel would just be really nice. So I've added 2 strips of 3mm foam tape to the back of that panel, and I'll do the same for each of the others. So liquid glue again onto our patterned paper, and then 2 strips of this 3mm tape is really good. It's a really great tape, and that 3mm does just make it stand out that little bit more. I'm going to pop him in the center, and these two were quite easy to line up because of the patterns in the background were in straight lines. But for this one, because the stripes are in a diagonal, then I did use the grid on my mat to help me line up my panel as well as I could. As you know, straight lines are not my strong point, but I think I did quite well here. Again, as we were saying during the live, if you knew, we didn't really know what we were going to do, but if you knew beforehand what your plan was going to be, so what pattern papers you're going to use, the size of your panels, the images that you're going to use, you can really do this in a conveyor belt fashion, and they would come together really quickly. And I really loved how these turned out. So finishing touches again were really simple: some glaze to the eyes and nose of the cat, some glossy accents to the nose of our little mouse, and then because it is a Christmas card, then you know, a little bit of sparkle wouldn't go amiss. So I've added some of my Stardust stickles to the top of the snow, and then to the little pom-poms on the Santa hats. And really that's all it needed. And I just thought that these, you know, you could use this style of design for any number of cards, and they are very simple to put together. Now at this point, everyone was crying out for an insert. So because again, we're trying to keep this quick and simple, we're making lots of cards for Christmas, so we want to keep things really as simple as possible. I reached for my sentiment cards, and these are perfect for this kind of thing because you don't have to think about it. They're already printed and lined up, ready for you to just use your trimmer to get them to the right size. So I've just trimmed these down, snipped off the edges so that they're the right size, and then I'm adding some liquid glue and just going to pop a different sentiment onto the inside of each of my cards here. So a sentiment that is appropriate to the outside message. So this bold Merry Christmas is fabulous for the inside of our penguin card. And then finally, I've gone for the wishing we could be together this Christmas for our cat. And I'm using again the mat to help me line that up straight on the inside of my card. So that's the 3 cards there. Like I say, I think these are a really great idea if you are wanting to batch make your Christmas cards. I'm definitely going to be doing this again because once you've got the formula right, it is so easy to do. I really do hope that you've enjoyed the tutorial and the video today. If you did, then please do like and subscribe to our channel. There will be more videos coming in the future. And we'd also love it if you could join us for our Facebook Live every Thursday at 8 o'clock, where we work together to create projects just like this. Thank you so much for watching. Enjoy your Christmas card making, and I'll see you all again real soon. Bye bye now.